Hello all, welcome to another session in Practice Selenium Java Automation here series. As part of this session, I am going to show you how to automate Shadow DOM, both open and closed Shadow DOM. Okay, so here we have three fields, guys. It looks very simple and straightforward that we have to enter the first name into this field, enter the last name into the field, enter the email address into this field. That's it. But you see, the looks are very easy, but the practicals are not so easy. Okay, if you try to do this, just assuming that these fields are the normal fields, and you feel that okay, it can be done in just 2 minutes. It's not like that, guys, because there is a concept known as shadow DOM, which is involved in this. But for now, let's understand the problems first. Okay, let's try to automate this without worrying about shadow DOM and see what is the problem we are facing. And after that, I'm going to explain how to automate these fields by entering some text here. Okay, fine. So for that, I'll switch to this Eclipse ID and create a new class. I'll just name this as name this class as shadow DOM demo. Shadow DOM demo. Okay, I'll just name this as shadow DOM demo. With a main method I'll create, and inside this I'm going to write some automation code like opening the Chrome browser and all those stuff, like web driver is equal to new Chrome driver, web driver is equal to new Chrome driver, then Control Shift O, automatically this web driver interface and Chrome driver class will be implemented and imported from the Java library, I mean Selenium library, then driver dot manage dot window dot maximize. This will open the browser window. Then driver dot get command I'll use. Here I need to open the application URL. So this shadow DOM page URL I'll open here. I'll just copy this URL, Control C, and here Control V. That's it. And after that, I just need to inspect this first name field, right click and select the inspect option. And here you can clearly see there is an ID here. Copy this ID and here write down driver.find element by.id, id locator for that first name field. Okay, and put a semicolon here and say first name is equal to, or the mouse on this and say create a local variable. After that, write down first name dot send keys. It looks very simple and easy, right? A normal Selenium automation script it looks like, but thing is that it's not going to work out. Okay, it will not be entering Arun into this. After entering the Arun here into the first name field, I would like to enter my my last name into the last name field. So I have inspected the last name field. I got this ID and inspect this last name field. The HTML code, I got this HTML code for the last name field, which has an ID attribute. So I'll simply write down driver.find element by.id, provide the ID locator. Okay, put a semicolon here, and here I'll simply say last name is equal to create a web element, and simply write down last name dot send keys, provide the last name. Whatever my last name is Moturi, I'll just type Moturi here. That's it. And then next one is what I'll inspect this field. And here I got an ID as email. I'll copy this email as ID and simply say driver.find element by.id, provide the ID address of that email and put a semicolon here and then write down first name, last name, email is equal to, hold the mouse on this and say create local variable, and here write down email dot send keys, provide the send keys here and simply write down the email address, that is arun@gmail.com. Okay, some random email address I am taking, and if you run this code, it may feel like this will work, but it's not going to work, guys. None of these things will be entered into the those fields on the page. It will open the browser. First of all, the script will open the Chrome browser. Let's wait for the script to run. First, we'll launch the Chrome browser in some mode and then maximize that browser. Then it will open the application URL. And after opening that application URL and the page is loaded completely, the Selenium will wait for the page to load. And you see here, the page has been loaded completely, but none of the details got entered into this first name, last name, and email fields. And instead, we got an exception here called as no such element exception. Another reason for getting no such element exception in Selenium automation is the elements are not normal elements. They are hidden in the form of DOM, okay? Shadow DOM. They are part of the shadow DOM. So what exactly is this shadow DOM? Let me explain all those stuff, guys. Okay. So guys, this is all how it looks like. Let me explain about the concept. To resolve this problem of no such element exception at this particular line, Java 16th line, when you are trying to enter the first name, that is Arun, into the first name field, we got that exception. The reason is it's very pretty simple that the locators are good, everything is good, but things are not working because there is a concept of shadow DOM here. Okay. Then what is that shadow DOM? What is that shadow DOM? We have to understand first. Okay. Not to solve this problem, first we have to understand what exactly is meant by the shadow DOM. I'll tell you. Shadow DOM. So first of all, we need to understand, before understanding shadow DOM, we have to understand a term known as DOM. What is DOM? To understand shadow DOM, we have to understand what is DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. What is DOM? DOM stands for Document Object Model. Okay, Document Object Model. Let's say I'll explain about this Document Object Model. So what happens generally in the real time is there will be a browser, and on the other side we have this HTML code somehow. Okay, there's some HTML code here. Okay, so written in HTML code, some HTML file is there. So browser, in order to, okay, a browser can understand this HTML code, right? So before rendering this HTML code as a HTML web elements on the HTML page, like the text fields or buttons or whatever that is written in the HTML code, before rendering this, before like before actually displaying this HTML code as a web page, okay, the browser has, this is a browser, right? The browser has to, go through this HTML code, and once the browser understands this HTML code, browser will do what? It will, on this browser itself, on the web page, we will see what, according to the HTML page, some buttons, radio buttons, checkbox fields, everything will be displayed. This is how what the browser does, right? Browser will go to the HTML code and render that. According to the HTML code, browser has to render this on the HTML web elements on the HTML page. Okay, but before this browser renders this particular HTML on the HTML web pages, okay, on the web pages of the browser, before these elements that are, specified in this HTML code are rendered here. In between, what happens is browser will create something known as DOM. Browser directly will not render this HTML code as HTML web pages with the web elements. Rather, the browser will first convert that into DOM, which is called as Document Object Model. Browser first converts this HTML code into the DOM format, Document Object Model, and after converting to the DOM, then browser will render that HTML code into the HTML page with the HTML web elements. Okay, this is what happens. But why the browser has to convert this HTML code into the DOM before rendering it as a HTML page on with the web elements? Because there are some third-party things like JavaScript, etc. Okay, so whenever a page is there, there will be static activities and dynamic activities. For dynamic activities to be possible, JavaScript is required. Okay, when you click on a button, some color of the page should change or whatever, such kind of activities if you want, then JavaScript will only interact with the web elements on this web page with the help of the DOM. That's the reason browser, before converting the HTML code into the HTML web page with the web elements, it will convert the HTML code into the DOM so that the JavaScript will be able to interact with the elements in the coming, whenever user tries to interact on the UI part using this buttons, checkbox fields and all. You want some animations or you want something to happen dynamically, right? So for that, JavaScript is required. For that JavaScript to be possible, this DOM is required. JavaScript will only interact with the DOM elements. It will not directly interact with HTML code. Rather, JavaScript will interact with the DOM elements. And because of that interaction of JavaScript DOM elements, the web page becomes dynamic. Otherwise, the web page will not become dynamic. So that the picture of DOM came here. Okay, the picture of DOM. The reason why DOM is like HTML code is converted to DOM by web browsers is, this is the reason. Okay, JavaScript need to interact with the DOM elements to make these web elements on the web pages dynamic. Browser will render this HTML code as a web pages with web elements after converting to DOM. Okay, before converting to DOM, this web page will not be created, guys. Okay, will not be rendered on the browsers. Okay, so that's the concept of DOM, guys. But how does the DOM look like? I'll take a sample HTML code and convert that to DOM. Let's say this side we have some HTML code. Okay, HTML. I'll just write some sample HTML code, guys. So inside the HTML code we have the head tag. head tag, and here closing of the head tag slash head, and here we have title tag. Here we have title tag, title, then say slash title, then say slash title. Okay, so here I'll write down head title, and I'll say title one, some title one, I'll say some title I'm giving, and here I have to write the closing HTML tag also, and along with the head there will be one body. Actually body tag will be there in HTML. Let's, because for displaying the elements on the body section of the web page, the body tag should be there. And in the body, let's say there is a paragraph. Let's say there is a paragraph. Okay, having some ID is equal to para1. Okay, and it has some text, para1 text. Para1 text is there, and this is the closing of the paragraph. And similarly, we have some other thing like a button. Okay, let's say there is a button. This button is having ID is equal to button1, button1, and let's say there is one more attribute like name is equal to button2. Sorry, name is equal to b name. Okay, let's assume that. Okay, and here the button text is there like a button1 text, like a button X is the text, okay, of the button. Name of the button is button X, and here slash button. This is how some HTML code is there. Some sample HTML code is like this. Okay, assume that this HTML code, if the browser has to render this, understand this HTML and render that in the form of on the web page as a with the web elements and all. Before that, the browser has to convert this HTML code into DOM. DOM will look like a DOM means document object model. It will, this intermediary thing that browser will convert that HTML before rendering as a web page is called as DOM. The full form is document object model. DOM is like a tree structure, guys. Okay, it looks like a tree structure. So first of all, here DOM will represent a document, okay, HTML document. Okay, so here on the top document will be there. This document means HTML document. Okay, so this HTML code is part of a document, right? HTML file, right? That is nothing but this document refers to the entire HTML file. And under the document, what is there? Under the document, what is there? Under the document, we have HTML, guys. Okay, under the document, we have HTML. So here I'll write down HTML here. Under the document, we have HTML. So, and under the HTML, we have two children, right? Under the HTML, if you see, there are two head and body children are there. I'll go with the head. First of all, I'll go with head, guys. I'll go with head. Head child is there. Then along with the head, we have the body also. Along with the head, we have the body also. I'll go with the body here. I'll go with the body here. Body. Okay. Inside the head, there is a title tag, right? Inside the head, there is a title tag. So here, title will come. Here, title will come. So this is how the DOM tree structure will be created by, browser before rendering that HTML code. Instead of directly rendering the HTML code or as web pages with web elements, browser will first convert that HTML code in this kind of DOM tree structure. So here under the head, what will be there? Title tag is there. And also, if you clearly see, this particular title doesn't have any attributes, but it has some text. So text node also will be created here in the DOM tree structure. Text node also will be created. So here text will be created. Okay, text node, the title text. Okay, here I'll simply say title text. Title text. Whatever the title text is there, that will be created as a DOM element. Okay, title text. This particular title text between the title tags will be created. Okay, fine. This part, head part is done. Now coming to the body part. So under the body, there are two elements, paragraph and button. So here I'll just write them. So here I'll write down paragraph, the para tag, P tag, which stands for paragraph. P stands for para, right? So P stands for para. So P tag will be there. And under the P tag, we have, under the P tag, we have an ID attribute. So ID node will be created here. ID node will be created. So attributes also, some separate tree nodes will be created. ID node will be created. Along with the ID node, we have value, ID node value is para1, that will be there here. And para1 text is there, right? The text will come here. Paragraph also, apart from the ID, it also has some text. So here text, I have to write like this, and text. I'm drawing this diagram with patiently. I'm drawing this. You have to have this basic knowledge, otherwise you'll not understand. Text, okay? Text, and after the text is there, now this side of the body section, we have the button tag. So I'll write the button here. I'll just write the button here. Button. Okay, button for button tag, button will be there. And under the button tag, ID is there, name is there, text is there. Okay. Under the button tag, what is there? We have ID. We have ID, guys. First one is ID. Then we have name. Then we have name. Then we have name. Name attribute. And one more thing is also there. Some text is also there between the tags. The text. The other one is text. Okay, this is like some DOM tree structure will be created by the browser before converting that into, before rendering that HTML code on the web page with web elements and all. The DOM tree structure will be created by the browsers. Any browser that is looking at that HTML code as input. Okay, fine. So this is how the DOM tree structure will be created. All good. So far, so good. Till now, you understood what is DOM means. Now, what exactly is mean by shadow DOM then? Once you understand DOM, now the time has come for you to understand shadow DOM. Okay. So what is this shadow DOM? Shadow DOM means, okay, shadow DOM means it's not openly visible. Okay, it's not openly available. As a shadow of this particular DOM, some other child DOM will be there. Okay, for this particular entire DOM, some child DOM will be there. For example, if one of this particular element of this, okay, in one of these nodes, let's say, in one of these nodes, let's say this node as this button node. Okay, let's take the example of this button node. Let's assume that this button node is there. So what the button node is doing that, it's connecting to another DOM. Okay, this is a main DOM. This is a main DOM. Whatever you are seeing is a main DOM. Okay, this inside this main DOM, let's say this is a main DOM. When I talk about shadow DOM, we have to understand about main DOM. This is a main DOM. Okay, this is nothing but the main DOM. Okay, so here we have the main DOM. So the main DOM, there is one element, guys. There is one element in the main DOM. Okay, there is one element in the main DOM, and that element is connecting to another DOM. Okay, another DOM. This particular one of the element in the main DOM, that is button DOM node, is connecting to another DOM. Okay, so in the DOM, again, we have some elements like this. For example, there is one root element. Okay, and there are some child elements. Okay, child DOM node elements. Okay, so here, just let me go back here. I have to draw it properly. Okay, so this is the main DOM. Let's say this is a main DOM, and in this main DOM, this button DOM is connecting to one of the element in this particular main DOM, that is button DOM element. Okay, on the main DOM here, this is a main DOM, right? So I'll write down here. This is a main DOM. Okay, this is a main DOM. Main DOM. Okay, this main DOM is connecting to this this complete square box. Whatever the box I have written is the main DOM. In that we have document, HTML, head, body, title text, P, ID, text, button, ID, name, text. All these are the nodes. In that, the button is connecting to, okay, the button, one of the element of this main DOM is connecting to one element in this another DOM. There's another DOM. This DOM is only connected to this element on the main DOM. Other elements doesn't have access to this particular DOM, only body or this button. Let's say I still wrote some mistake here. Here button I wanted to connect. I don't want to connect the body, guys. So one of the element, let's say button element, is connecting to this another DOM. So this has some node, and under the node there are some other nodes. Under the nodes there are some other nodes like this. Okay, they have another nodes similar to the main DOM. They also have some connections like this. Okay, they also have some connections like this, and some DOM tree structure is there. Okay, and this kind of situation is there, guys. Okay, so here one of the element is connecting to another shadow DOM. This is called as a shadow DOM. Okay, whatever the button is connecting, right, this is called as shadow DOM. Okay, this is a shadow DOM where only one element, one node element of this main DOM as a connection to the this DOM elements. Here, for example, this is called as this main element in the shadow DOM that this button is connecting is called as shadow root. Okay. Here I'll give something here. This is called as shadow root. What is this called as? Shadow root. Shadow. This is called as shadow root. Using this root only, remaining nodes are connected. Okay. And here button, one of the node that is from the main DOM which is connecting to this shadow root of this entire thing is called a shadow DOM. And whatever the element that is this particular element of the main DOM is connecting is called a shadow root. And whatever the element that is connecting to this shadow root of this entire shadow DOM is called as shadow host. Shadow host. These are the terminologies you have to understand, guys. This is called a shadow host. This button is nothing but the shadow host, whereas this particular element to which the button is connecting in this example is called a shadow root, and complete thing which is shadow DOM kind of stuff, which is is acting like a shadow to this main DOM is called as shadow DOM. Entire this box is called a shadow DOM. This is the main DOM, this shadow host, shadow root. Okay, shadow host, the element that is connecting is shadow host. Okay, like that some terminologies we have to understand, guys. But why this shadow host, shadow DOM is required? What is what is the purpose of this shadow DOM? We have to understand. Okay, so there is some explanation I can give that. So let's say if you don't make this, I'll tell you at a high level, guys, but for explanation I'll go to some other thing. But I'll tell you, if I don't make this particular DOM, an external DOM kind of stuff which is connecting only to this button node, right? If I don't make this as a shadow DOM kind of stuff, then if I make this another DOM, a child DOM of this main DOM, there is a possibility that this DOM properties, the shadow DOM, this normal extra DOM properties may get leaked. Not only it should be applied only for button, guys. The shadow DOM only should apply for button. It should not be applied for paragraphs, another title tags, and all those stuff. Okay, any other elements should not be applied. This shadow DOM, this particular DOM should be applied only the settings or whatever configurations you call of this shadow DOM should be applied to only this button. In that case, we create shadow DOM, guys. Only the element that needs that particular extra things, right, will be connecting to that DOM, and that extra DOM is called as shadow DOM. So the reason why they mentioned it as shadow DOM is that it will not leak, guys. Okay, once it is connected to one of the element, only up to this element it will be applied. So by putting this under the button here, right, this will not be applied. Okay, no confusions will happen where by when the developers are working, right, this will not affect any other areas of this HTML DOM elements. Okay, only button only it will be applied. This part will be only for button, and these things will not be applied for paragraphs, etc. Okay, that's why they made it a separate entity like this. And the shadow host is actually connecting to the shadow root of the shadow DOM, and this will be only applicable for this button. And if that is not made shadow DOM, this may have leaked outside and would have gone for paragraphs, title, and etc. Okay, that's the high level thing I understand about shadow DOM. But let's do some R&D on this shadow DOM, so that what is shadow DOM and all, you will get something. I'll go to ChatGPT and then I'll type shadow DOM. What is shadow DOM? I'll ask ChatGPT. It will give you the answer. What is shadow DOM? What is shadow DOM? I'll simply ask what is shadow DOM. Okay, in HTML, etc. Okay, so they'll understand here. So you see, it's like way to encapsulate or something it is saying. That's okay. Let's go here to the top. Shadow DOM, document object model in HTML, is a way to encapsulate the structure, style, and behavior of a web component. Okay, it allows developers to create self-contained components with their own scoped styles and functionality without worrying about conflicts with the styles or script of the main document or other components of the page. So that shadow DOM should only interfere with that shadow host element, that is button in our case. In this diagram, only for button, this should be interfering. The shadow DOM should be interfering. Okay, that self-contained component should only interfere with that button. That can contain some styles or functionality should interfere only with the button without worrying about conflicts. Okay, if that has not to be applied with other components on the web page like paragraphs, etc. In that case, we'll make that particular self-contained components with their own scoped styles and functionality as a shadow DOM. Okay. So here is a breakdown of what shadow DOM does. Encapsulation, isolation. Elements inside a shadow DOM are isolated from the main document styles and JavaScript. JavaScript also cannot interfere here. Okay, directly JavaScript cannot interfere if it doesn't know the shadow host or shadow root. This prevents style leakages. Only for that particular button, I want a particular style. Only for that particular button, I want some JavaScript functionality to be done or whatever the functionality I want. Okay, This prevents style leakage and unintended interfaces with other parts of the page. Okay, in that case, we'll go with the shadow DOM. Scoped styles, scoped CSS styles defined inside a shadow DOM are scoped to that component only. So in this case, if some styling parameters are mentioned here, styling tags are mentioned here, that styles will be only applicable for the button. It will not be applicable for other paragraph or head. Okay, they will be encapsulated only with the shadow host. Only for that shadow host only they will be applicable. Okay, encapsulation is isolated. The styling is isolated for that particular button only in our case, like that. Composition. Reusable components. Shadow DOM allows developers to create reusable components that can be dropped into different parts of a page or even different pages without worrying about naming, collisions, or unintended style changes. Okay, to just isolate and create a reusable kind of components, we create shadow DOM. How to use shadow DOM? You can create a shadow DOM for an element using JavaScript, for example. So how the shadow DOM will be created like this? You see document.getElement by ID attach shadow, like mode open. Okay, you can create this like this. Open mode means it is an open shadow DOM. Closed, if mode is closed means it's a closed shadow. There are two types of shadow DOM. One is open, another one is closed. Closed is completely private, guys. Okay, you cannot access. Open means at least we can interfere. Okay, with the help of shadow host, we can go and interfere with that. We can access the shadow DOM if it is open mode. If it is closed means it is the stylings and all those functionalities will be applicable for the button, but no one can interfere if the mode is closed. The gates are closed. Only the shadow host can go, but remaining other elements cannot interfere at any cost. Okay, that's what is the thing. Once you have the shadow DOM, you can add content to it, such as elements and styles. For example, in the shadow root inner HTML, you are writing some styles and some element, the content is inside of the shadow DOM like that you are creating. Accessing shadow DOM elements inside the shadow DOM are accessible through the shadow root property. Okay, there is a shadow root property, guys. I'll explain you what is the shadow root and all those stuff. Okay, so using the shadow root only we can access. Okay, for this particular shadow DOM, we have to create a shadow root. We have to identify the shadow root, and with the help of the shadow root only, we can identify the interact with the elements. Okay, if the shadow DOM is open, then only that is possible. Okay, there are two types of shadow DOM, guys. There are two types of shadow DOM. One type of shadow DOM is open shadow DOM. Okay, one type of shadow DOM is open shadow DOM. Other shadow DOM type is closed shadow DOM. Okay, other shadow DOM type is closed shadow DOM. Closed. This one is closed. Open shadow DOM and closed shadow DOM. There are two types of shadow DOM. Okay, so if someone want to, interact with these elements of the shadow DOM, okay, let's say there is a paragraph button here also in the shadow DOM. If that shadow DOM is open, then it is possible for us to interact the elements of the shadow DOM via this button shadow host, and by identify this root. If the root is open shadow DOM type, then we can interact. Okay, even though isolation is done, the doors are still open, guys. With the help of shadow host, and the shadow root, which is in open state, we can interact with elements. But what if the shadow DOM is closed? Only this property styles will be applied for this button and all. Okay, functionality will be applied for this button, and we cannot interact. If this is closed means there is no other way to interact, guys. This part is closed for us. Okay, this is closed for any other people to come and interact. Okay, so there are two types of shadow DOM, like open and closed. If it is closed type, the shadow root is of closed type, the shadow DOM will become closed shadow DOM. And with the even with the help of shadow host also, we cannot go and interact, but the properties, stylings, and everything will be applied for button, but we cannot go and interact from outside. Okay, so that's what is the thing. Developers cannot do anything to interact with this. Okay, so that's what is the thing. Even automation engineers, while automating such kind of shadow DOM elements which are in closed state, it's not possible directly. Okay, so but there are some tips and tricks that I'm going to cover in this session. Whether it is open or closed doesn't matter. We are going to interact with the elements of the shadow DOM. Okay, whether it is open or closed, there are some indirect tricks are there. I'm going to tell you. Okay, if it is open, then it's very easy, guys. If it is closed, then we have to go with additional ways to figure out the solutions. Okay, that's the thing. So now what I'll do here is I'll do one thing here. I will have explained here, right? So yeah, like this shadow root dot query selector, like that we can write the automation script, and allows you to access and manipulate the shadow DOM from JavaScript outside the, you see, if the shadow DOM, if this particular shadow DOM, the root element is set to, the mode is set to open, means it is open shadow DOM. In that case, what will happen in the open shadow DOM? What will happen? The open shadow DOM, where is that? And the open shadow DOM allows you to access and manipulate the shadow DOM from JavaScript outside of the component. Even though the JavaScript is outside the button component. In this example, button component, right? Even the shadow host component, JavaScript, which is outside this button component also can come here with the help of shadow host, that is button component. JavaScript can come here and interact with this DOM, shadow DOM elements if it is in open state. With the help of button, we can interact, okay? But if that is not open, if it is closed, prevents external access to the shadow DOM. This is more secured but limits direct manipulation. If you don't want any external JavaScript code to come and modify this behavior of the DOM elements of the shadow DOM, even via the button shadow host, then the developers will make this shadow DOM as closed by making the shadow root mode to set to closed. Here what happens, even the external JavaScript cannot come and interact with even they know the shadow host also, they cannot do any interactions or modifications here. Okay, that will restrict and it will make secure. Okay, if your security is the important thing, we'll close the shadow DOM. If modifications are allowed by the external JavaScript via the shadow host, then we'll make it open. That's what is the concept you have to understand, guys. Okay, so why shadow DOM is required? What are the different types of shadow DOMs we are understanding here? Okay, custom elements. When defining custom elements, the shadow DOM is often used to encapsulate their internal structuring and styling. Web components. Shadow DOM is a key feature of web components which allow you to create reusable custom elements with encapsulated functionality and styling. Okay, we can reuse the shadow DOM with the different elements, not only for the button, different elements also we can by making that particular thing as a shadow host for different the same shadow DOM. We can apply that. We can reuse the shadow DOM for different elements. Okay. In summary, shadow DOM is a powerful feature that helps create modular, reusable, and encapsulated components for web development, enhancing the maintainability and reusability of the code. Mainly isolation, guys. Main thing I can see is isolation of that particular styling application only for few set of components in the web application rather than for all, without the problem of getting some conflicts in styles when you are doing it for other elements, right? Suddenly some paragraphs will get the styling of another element. Okay, if you don't want that, we have to isolate that particular thing into a shadow DOM. And if you make that shadow DOM open, that means external JavaScript can go and interact with that DOM element, shadow DOM elements. Otherwise, external JavaScript via the shadow host also cannot go and interfere. Okay, so if you don't understand this, watch this video again, guys, you'll get it. Okay, so the concept is like that. There's no other way to explain. So if you are not able to understand what this shadow DOM or something like, what you have to do is just put comments in the, I will explain, or watch this video again. Okay, watch this concept of DOM and shadow DOM again, then it will be clear for you. Okay, so via the shadow host, we can external JavaScript can come and interact with the elements of this shadow DOM only when the shadow DOM mode is set to open in the shadow root. If the shadow root mode is not set to open, instead set to close, in that case, external JavaScript along with the help of button shadow host also, it will not be able to interact here. Okay, completely restricted. The shadow DOM is completely restricted to this button. The styling and features will be applied to the button, but external JavaScript cannot come and modify the styling and other things of this particular shadow DOM. Okay, if it is closed. That's why this type of things are there. But how to automate? Coming back to the automation. Now let's come to the automation. Here our script has not worked. Neither my first name has been typed into the neither my first name has been typed into the first name field. My last name has been typed into the last name field. Neither my email address has been typed into the email address field. Okay. So to overcome this problem, what I have to do is I'll go back to the application, guys. I'll go back to the application. I'll inspect again. This time, there are several reasons for getting no such element exception in the output. When I have run this script, I got no such element exception. Whenever a no such element exception occurs, there are several reasons for this to happen. First, we may think that we have created wrong locator. This ID is a wrong, may not be unique. Maybe the developers have misused the ID. You can figure it out. Okay, if that is not the case, ID is not the case, we have given the proper locator, then what is the next thing? Maybe this element is not loading with the page in a proper way. It's coming on the page with a delay. Okay, after the page loads also, if this element is not coming with a delay, if that's coming, then we have to implement to make this synchronous kind of thing. We have to implement waiting mechanisms from Selenium, like implicit waiting mechanisms, explicit waiting mechanism to overcome that problem, to resolve the no such. But in this case, even that is also not a problem. Waiting is also not a problem, because when the page, after the page loads, this is coming on time. Selenium can find this element. Locator is correct. Element is coming on time without any delay and all. So that is also not a problem. Then what is the other problem? Maybe this particular element is part of a frame. But here, as you can see here, if I scroll up here, anywhere iframe tags are not there. On the top of this, iframes are not there. And if I right click also, view frame kind of options are not coming, so it is not part of an iframe. Or maybe another reason, maybe this may be part of another child window or something, but only one window is there in this example, and this particular field is part of the same window. So Selenium focus is still on the same window, so that also is ruled out. All the possibilities are ruled out, guys. Okay, incorrect locator is ruled out, waiting time is ruled out. Okay, then part of a frame is ruled out, or part of a different window is ruled out. Okay, so then what may be the thing? If all these are like a police investigation, we have to check one by one. Like, not if this is not incorrect allocator, then what is the thing? If is it a waiting problem? Check that. Yeah, it's not a waiting problem. Still after waiting also the problem is not solved. Okay, then it's not a waiting problem. Then go for the third step. Is this particular field part of a frame or something? Go and search in the right click here and search view pesos options are coming. I mean view frame kind of options are coming or not, or inspect that element and scroll up to see whether any of the parent of this from here to the top HTML tag, any parent element has a parent or grandparent has an iframe kind of tag name. That is also not the case. Let's say that is also ruled out. Now just check whether this particular field is coming as part of another window. When you're handling multiple windows, the no such element exception may come. Here no multiple windows are coming, only one original window is there. Now if I have to get the solution, what I have to do, the fifth investigation point is that whether this particular field is part of a shadow DOM or something. How can I confirm whether this is part of a shadow DOM? You see, when you scroll up here, if you see this kind of shadow root kind of stuff, definitely this is part of the shadow DOM. In your HTML code, if you see shadow root kind of things, whether it is open or closed, doesn't matter. If you see the shadow root means it's part of the shadow DOM. Then what I have to do? Then if it is part of the shadow DOM, what I have to do? So whether it is open or closed. First of all, you have to see whether it is open. Oh, it's open. That means I can access. But via what I have to access this shadow root? I cannot directly access the shadow root. So in order to access this particular shadow root, I have to take the help of the shadow host. I have to identify the shadow host which can connect me to the shadow root. Here guys, here we have a shadow root available, but to connect to that shadow root, we need a shadow host. Which element from this main DOM is connecting to the shadow root? The parent of the shadow root, which is nothing but this div tag from this main HTML code. Main DOM is this HTML code. In that, this div having some ID as open shadow is the element. In this case, we have the button, right? In this case, we have the button as a shadow host, right? In this case, what is the shadow host? Shadow host is nothing but the element that is actually connecting to this shadow root. Via the shadow root, this shadow DOM elements are being connected to this shadow host. These are shadow host, these are shadow DOM elements, and this is shadow root. Okay, three things are there. So we have to take the locator of the shadow host. Okay, it can be a button or anything. In this case, it is a div tag. There is an ID for the shadow host in this example. Okay, which is connecting to the shadow DOM elements. Copy the ID, go back here, and here write down something. Before you perform any operation, you write down something like this. Okay, driver dot find element by dot ID, provide the ID locator of that shadow host. Shadow host is nothing but what? This open shadow is the shadow host. Okay, so here I'll write down shadow host. Okay, is equal to, I'll write simply. Okay, I'll create a web element out of it for the shadow host, which is connecting from the main DOM to the shadow DOM. Who is connecting? This is open shadow DOM. The type of the shadow root is open, so there won't be any problem. The security restrictions problem won't be there. Since it is open type, shadow host is there. Then I'll simply write down shadow host. There is a predefined method given by Selenium, guys. Okay, in Selenium library, there is a predefined method to get the shadow root. With the help of shadow host, we can, with the help of this shadow host, for example, in this case, shadow host is there. By locating the shadow host and creating a web element, with the web element of this, with the web element of this shadow host, we can retrieve the shadow root. How to retrieve the shadow root? Using a predefined method of the Selenium library. Here we'll get shadow root. There is a predefined method known as shadow root. It will return you something. What is that it will return? Over the mouse on the search context, it will return. Okay, get shadow root, search. What is that? SC. I'll say SC here for now. Okay, search context. Over the mouse on this and say create local variable. Now, once that is done, then what I have to do? What I have to do, guys? Simple, guys. I have to take this search context inside this shadow root. Once we got the access to this shadow root, once we got the access to the shadow root of the shadow host, that is come from the main DOM. Shadow host is the one which is connecting to the shadow root. which is the root element of the shadow DOM. Okay, once you get the shadow root of the shadow DOM, then we can get the elements using this shadow root. Using this shadow root, we can simply say shadow root dot. This shadow root is captured here in the search context, and here we can say find elements. Okay, dot find element. You can say the shadow root. Simple thing is that shadow root is giving an object reference of the search context. Search context dot find element, we can say. And here I can write down, we should only be using CSS selector here, guys. Okay, no matter what you use so far, but when you use this shadow root, and inside the shadow root, if you want to locate an element, right, then you have to use sc dot find element. And here, what is that particular element which is there in the inside the shadow root here? If I go here, if I you see, with the help of this shadow host, I got the shadow root. This shadow root, I got it, and it's open state. Now with the help of this shadow root, I'm trying to locate these elements. Now inside this shadow root, we have the shadow DOM elements. With the help of shadow root, which is in open state, I would like to find this. I can find it with the help of ID, right? But I should not be using the ID locator, guys. I have to use CSS selector. How to convert this ID into CSS selector? Here, write down by dot CSS selector, right, like that. Okay. In the write down here hash, there is shortcut, right? Hash id is equal to f name. Instead of writing the CSS selector, I like this in id is equal to f name. Instead of writing this, there is shortcut for this. Okay, this is a CSS selector of that particular first name field. Instead of that, we can write hash id name, id attribute value. So this will return you, this particular thing will return you the first name field. Okay, this web element first name will be returned here. Okay, directly it's not possible to interact with the DOM elements, guys. I'll remove this line, it's not required. Directly now say first name dot send keys, it will work. Okay, so first thing is that after going to the page, we have to identify the shadow host which is connecting to the shadow root. Okay, after locating the shadow host and creating the web element, nowadays the Selenium latest version of Selenium is giving you a predefined method known as get shadow root. Using that shadow host element, we can get the shadow root, and we can store that into the object reference of search context. Using the object reference of the search context, we can call this find element, like the way we say driver dot find element, right? We can say search context dot find element, we can say. Why? Because just go to the search context here, just go to the declaration of search context. It will be implemented by, you see, it has find elements and find element. Okay, so if you go to the hierarchy of Selenium WebDriver and all, you will understand that. Okay, you will understand the it's one of the parent of the web element or something. I'll cover that in the upcoming session. But if you still want to see the WebDriver hierarchy of search context and all, I'll show you here. WebDriver hierarchy. What is that? WebDriver hierarchy, I have to say, and then I'll mention that as WebDriver hierarchy of search context, web element, etc. Search context, web element. Okay, I'll just search like this, so you'll get some diagrams here. Okay, images. Just go here somewhere, you will see this. This is one diagram. Okay, this is my own diagram, guys. Okay, if I click on that, YouTube video will come maybe. This is created by me only. Okay. Yeah, this is my video only, my image only. So you can understand here. You see what is there, guys. Here WebDriver is there. Here search context is on the top. You see, WebDriver is an interface. To that, search context is a parent, and here remote WebDriver is there. For them, we have different stuff like remote WebDriver is there. For WebDriver, remote WebDriver is there. Under that, we have Chrome driver, Firefox driver, Opera driver, etc. Okay, and Chrome driver, Edge driver are part of the Chromium driver. Okay, like this hierarchy is there, guys. So since search context is on the top level, all the predefined methods of the search context are inherited by WebDriver. So whenever you say WebDriver driver is equal to new, right? Driver.find element is coming from some context because it is inheriting it. Okay. From that, remote WebDriver is inheriting that find elements, and all these child classes is inheriting the find elements from the remote WebDriver or WebDriver. Okay. Using any of the object reference of this Chrome driver or Firefox driver, you can access the find element, right? Similarly, search context has find element. It's coming from the top. Okay. It's a grandparent of all these classes, where from which you are getting find elements. If you go to one of the Chrome driver implementation, you can see that clearly. Chrome driver will have Chromium driver. Understand here. Chrome driver, who is the parent of the Chrome driver? Chrome driver is a predefined class. whose parent is Chromium driver. Okay, whose parent is Chromium driver. Go inside the Chromium driver. Chromium driver is another class which extends remote web driver. Chromium driver is another class which extends a remote web driver. What is the remote web driver? You see, extends is there means most probably it's a class. Okay, class is a remote web driver. Now, what about remote web driver? Who is the parent of the remote web driver? Take screenshot, web driver, and JavaScript executor. All these three are the parents. Okay. So remote web driver implementation, I'm going to the implementation of the remote web driver. So I'll just go here, remote web driver. I'm not going anywhere actually. Remote web driver, open declaration. Yeah. Did I go? No. Public class. Yeah, here implements is there anyhow. Okay, here only you can see that remote web driver is implementing what? Web driver. You see, remote web driver is implementing web driver, JavaScript executor, and it's also importing take screenshot. Somewhere take screenshot will be there like that. Okay. So I'll go to the web driver. Out of all these things, I'll go to the web driver. If I go to the web driver interface, this particular web driver interface is importing the search context. Okay, on the top, search context is again another interface, parent interface of the web driver interface, and the search context has find elements, find element, and find element methods. Okay, find element and find elements method are there. By creating an object, by using the object reference of the search context of this interface, we can access the find element and find elements. Are the reason. Okay, got it right? The hierarchy. You have to understand this hierarchy, guys. Okay, so that's the reason in our code, whenever I just this get shadow root is giving you an object reference of the search context. Using this object reference, I can call the find element. Okay, using that search context, which is at the parent level, has this find element method. I can do that. But here inside this find element, because if it is inside the shadow root, okay, in the shadow root, if you are searching means you have to use by.css selector, guys. Okay, sc.find element. You should say by.css selector. By.css selector. You cannot use XPath or something. In the shadow DOM elements will cannot be located with the help of XPath or any other locator types. You have to use CSS selector only to locate. That's very important point to consider. Here in place of by.css selector, this shadow root thing with the help of you're searching inside shadow root with some ID XPath or it will not work. It will not find it. Okay. So you have to, if you have to find, you have to find CSS selector via the CSS selector route. Then it will be able to find the element and say send keys and type Arun here. Let's see whether this is working at least. Let's not worry about this last name and all. For now, let's worry about this first name. At least my name, first name has been typed into the first name field. Then we are good to go. Okay. So I've run the script, guys. Let's see what is happening in the script. Let's see what is happening in the script. The browser is launching. Okay. The browser is launching, guys. Has opened the application URL. Into the first name field, it is typing my name or not. Let's see. Into the first name field, you see my name has been typed. Into the first name field, my name has been typed. And we have last name and email fields also, but they are not working. Okay. Only first name has been typed for now because we have worked on the first name. Now we have to inspect the last name. Similarly, the way I inspected the first name, we have to inspect the last name and email and to see whether to which shadow DOM they belong to and how to connect and all, whether it is open shadow DOM or closed DOM. We have to keep investigating, guys. Okay. For now, what is open and closed shadow DOM I explained, and we have interacted with the open shadow DOM for now. So did we interact with the closed shadow DOM? Not yet, but we'll try to see. Maybe if any other remaining option, last name, email is a closed shadow DOM, I can show you that. Okay, fine. So for open shadow DOM, this is the way, guys. Okay, this is the way. Now I'll go back here and I'll go back to my application, and here Arun is already entered. I'll inspect this last name field. So this particular last name field, also we are getting an error. No such element exception is coming. The reason is again the shadow DOM. Just go and see here, shadow root is there, but here closed is there. If this is closed, can I get the shadow host? What is the shadow host here? For this shadow root which is in closed state, even though you know the shadow host, and with the help of shadow host also you cannot interact with these elements. Okay, so I'll do one thing here, the way I did with the first name, right? I would like to do the same thing with the last name here. Okay, I'll simply try to find out the shadow host for this closed shadow root. Okay, there is a closed shadow root here. It's not open, it's closed shadow root. For this particular element is inside the shadow root, which is of closed state. For this particular shadow root of closed state, this is a shadow host. Okay, I'll copy this part and see if this is the only element available. Control F / my web element. Let's see how many elements are coming here. Here one of one only is coming. Okay, the shadow host has only one tag, so only one is there. So I'll copy this. I'll copy this XPath expression which is locating the shadow host of this particular shadow root which is in closed state, where last name field is inside this shadow DOM, which is in closed state. Okay, at least I found the host element. So here I'll write down driver.find element by dot. You can use any locator here for shadow host, not a problem. For locating the shadow host, no problem. While locating the shadow root, we have to give the CS selector. Find element by dot. I'll give the XPath expression, or you can say by dot tag name also. That's also fine. If you are giving XPath, that's also fine. So here it will give you shadow host 2, I'll say. Okay. Here's shadow host 1. Let's change it to shadow host 1. Shadow host 1 for first name field, we are using shadow host 1. In the shadow host 1, we got the shadow root of the shadow host 1, and then using the shadow root of the shadow host, which is in open state, we are able to query using the CSS selector and able to get the text entered into that fields. Okay, but in this case, it's not a open shadow host. Shadow host is there, but this particular shadow host is not connecting to a shadow root which is of open type. Rather, this shadow host is connecting us to a shadow root. This shadow host is connecting us to a shadow root inside which we have this last name field. Inside this shadow root of closed state, we have the last name field. But without this shadow root, we cannot connect this. Let's try connecting here. What's happening? Let's see. It won't be possible, guys, but we'll try that. Okay. At least we have to give a try, right? Shadow host dot get shadow root. Okay. Get shadow root. So for the closed shadow root, I'm going to retrieve the closed shadow root. This get shadow root will give you the search context as usual. So I'll simply say search context sc2 is equal to, here sc1 I'll say, otherwise here sc2 I'll say sc1 dot. Okay, here sc2 shadow context 2, and here if I say sc2 dot find element, similarly find element. Okay, find element, here we have to use CSS selector only, guys, by dot CSS selector, and CSS selector locator of that particular last name field. Here last name field has an ID. I have to use the same way by the hash the value of the ID. Okay, like this I'll give. And if this works well, the last name field should be returned. Last name should be identified. Okay, over the ones create and now I have to perform the operation. This element I will remove. This line I will remove, and simply I'll perform the last name dot send keys. Let's see whether this will work or not. In this case, it is working because the first name field is part of a shadow root which is of open state. So find element is possible here. External things can come and access the elements inside the DOM with the help of this shadow host. Okay. With the shadow host, we got the shadow root, and inside the shadow root, we are querying because we got a root here with the help of shadow host. We found a root of shadow root which is in open state, and we are able to interact with the shadow DOM elements. Okay, directly we cannot interact, but with the help of shadow host and its connection to the open shadow root, we can interact with the elements. But in this case, what's happening? This particular shadow host is not connecting to a shadow root. Is of the connected shadow root is of not open state; it's closed state. The gates are closed. Even with the help of this shadow host, we cannot access this shadow root, and since we will not be able to access the shadow root, these things will fail. Okay, we'll get different kind of exceptions here. Let's run the code and see that the way Arun has been entered into the first name field will not happen for the last name field. My last name Motori will not be entered into the last name field because of that reasons, because shadow root type is of closed type. Okay, then compared to the first name was the element was part of the shadow root of open type, whereas last name field is part of the shadow root of closed type. Hence, only Arun will be entered into the first name field, and Motori, my last name, is not entered into the last name field. If you go and check here, you see no such shadow root exception is coming. Okay, different type of exception, guys, that you may not have heard of. The no such shadow root exception. Okay, you're getting no such shadow root exception because the shadow root is of which type? Closed type. Can you retrieve the shadow root which is of closed type? Not possible. Here open type you can retrieve, but here closed type you cannot retrieve, guys. In which line we got the exception? Just see here, 23rd line. So this line, you see, shadow host is unable to get the access to the shadow root because the shadow root is of closed type. That's the reason you will get an exception known as no such shadow root exception. No such shadow root exception you will get. Okay, no such shadow root exception you will get, and because of that, all the remaining things, exception comes means remaining code will not be run. So this is not possible. Then what about this find element, email thing? Let's try that with email. Anyhow, it is not working with, I'll just comment out this for a while because it's not working, and I'll focus on the third element, that is email. At least I'll try to enter the email address. Again, I'll inspect this. Similarly, I'll go here and inspect this email field. Okay. And just see here, email field is also part of another shadow root, guys. Okay. So here we have an host as a shadow host has an ID locator. So I'll copy this. I'll try the same things, but here again, closed shadow root is there. Even with this host also, we cannot we cannot make the Selenium go and interact with this particular element to perform the operation on this element. That is not possible. Shadow root, there is no way in Selenium that you can interact with the shadow DOM elements. Okay, they are closed type. So I'll prove you that. Okay, driver.find element. I have to create a web element for the. I'll create the web element for the shadow root. Shadow host. Find element by dot ID was there. ID locator is there for that, right? If you can see here, if when I inspected that, I have an ID for the shadow host. I'll copy this ID of the closed shadow host, shadow root. This is a shadow host actually from the main element, main DOM shadow host we are creating. I'll just say shadow host 3 I'll say is equal to and create the web element shadow host web element which is connecting us to the closed shadow root. Okay, now using this shadow host, I would like to get the shadow root. Okay, of that closed shadow root I want to get shadow root. I'll say get shadow root will give you the return type of the such context. I'll say SE3 is equal to such context 3 is equal to hover the mouse and create a such context here. And using this object reference, I would like to with the help of CSS selector, I would like to find the email address field. Dot find element by dot CSS selector. You have to compulsory write. You cannot use any other locator type. So I have written that, and here I'll go here and what is their email address field. This particular email address field. When I inspect here, it has an ID. So I'll take the ID of the email address field and I'll write a CSS selector for that hash the value of the ID attribute value of the CSS selector. Okay, hover the mouse on this and create the web element here. Create the web element here. What is the web element we have, guys? First name is done, last name is done. Email field. I'll say hover the mouse and say create local variable and simply say that email field dot. This is not required. This line is not required anymore. Simply say this email field dot send keys of email address. You have to enter. Let's see whether this is working or not. This also will not work. Why? Because this shadow root that you are trying to retrieve is a closed shadow root. So shadow host dot get shadow root will give you an error. That is an exception. That is a no such shadow root exception will come for us. Okay, no such shadow root exception is going to come for us, guys. Just run the script and observe that it will not type the email address into the email field. Only my first name will be typed because this shadow root is of open type. So this is possible. For closed shadow roots, no matter what you do, whether it has an ID, whether shadow has an ID or doesn't have an ID, doesn't work. Guys, you see the page will load and you see only Arun will be typed into the, and here my last name or email has last name anyhow I commented email. I'm checking now, but you will get the same exception. That is no such shadow root exception you are going to get. Okay, then how to solve this problem, guys? This is not the way to this. There is no way in Selenium automation with the help of getting the shadow root and finding the elements in the shadow DOM. We are unable to do because the shadow root is of which type? Closed type. Only the open type we can work. But is there any trick or tips? Okay, tip and tricks kind of stuff is there. Okay, using some tricks or tips, can we get this worked? Yes, there is a way, guys. That is okay. After the Arun has been typed, instead of going with the general way of finding the shadow DOM elements and all those stuff, I will do one thing. I'll just press the tab key here. Okay, there is actions class, right, which will simulate the keyboard key presses, right? I'll just press the tab key with the help of that. Now I'll type that. Okay, without locating these elements, just by using the actions class, I'll just press tab here. I'll enter the Motori, and after entering the Motori here, again I'll press the tab key. We'll go to the email field. I'll enter arun@gmail.com. I'll enter. Okay, so this is what I want to do to achieve this part. So let's see whether that is possible or not. Here, since these are closed shadow DOMs, we cannot. There is no way in Selenium to directly, in an ethical way, we cannot go. Using some tips and tricks only, we can do that. What are the tips and tricks? We have to create an object for the actions class. Actions is called new actions. Actions is called new actions. Control Shift O. Okay, we have imported this actions from Selenium library. Actions from interactions package of Selenium library. And here actions is there. And this actions cannot be empty. We have to pass the driver object of the web driver. Here, this particular driver, we have to pass it here. Okay, then the error will be gone. Then you have to say actions dot send keys command use. Send keys command of the actions class you have to use. This is not the send keys command of the web element. It's the send keys command of the actions class where you can simulate the keyboard keys. Okay, for example, keys is the predefined class in Selenium where you can retrieve all the keys. Which key I have to press? Tab key. Just type tab here. You will get the key here. Okay, just select that keys dot tab. So what will the send keys command will do? It will press and release the tab key. The moment it presses and release the tab key, I'll again type send keys here. So after you see if the page is like this, after typing Arun here, the cursor will be here. So when I press the tab key here using the actions command, if I press the tab key, what will happen? It will simulate the pressing of the tab key on your keyboard, because of which your cursor will go to the next field indirectly. Your cursor will go to the next field, and in that field, what I have to do, I have to type the text. So using the next send keys command of the actions class, I'll type the text. Let's say my last name I'll type. Then again I'll say dot send keys. Okay, because after typing my last name here, the cursor will be here. So I have to take the cursor to this email field. Again, I have to press tab. For that, in the send keys command, I will write keys dot tab key I have to press. And after that, after going to this email field, what I have to do, I have to enter the text. So dot send keys of my email address, that is arun@gmail.com. Okay, the line is going very far away, so I'll just can write like this, no problem. Okay, and again I can press like this, and at the end of these commands, for the action commands to work, you have to write build perform. If multiple commands are there, you have to use build, and for this action commands or methods should work, at the end we have to mandatorily add perform. If you forget to add perform, this commands will not work. Okay, in this case, what is happening? Let's see, with the help of actions class, I'm able to simulate that, even though directly with the help of shadow DOM and interaction, I'm not able to. So closed shadow root elements, you cannot interact. Yes, with the help of Selenium automation, you cannot find or locate or something. But the alternative way is that if this kind of situation will come to you in real time, with the actions class, you have to do that. There is no way of creating a locator for the closed shadow root elements, and finding the elements and locating them and performing operations is not possible. So in case of closed shadow root, okay, we have to take the approach of the actions class and somehow get the cursor control into that particular fields and enter the text or perform the operations on the fields. Run the script and see that this time my name will be typed into the open shadow root element, that is first name field, which is part of the open shadow root DOM, shadow DOM element first name field, and remaining elements are part of the closed shadow root, which you are tricking the browser in a way that using actions class we are getting it done. You see, Arun has to be typed. After the page loads, Arun should be typed, and press tab key. You see Motori, and everything is working fine now. Okay, this is how we can interact with the closed shadow DOM, not directly, not in a proper way, but we have to take the help of the actions class. Without that is not possible. Okay, without that is not possible, guys. There may be another solution where your developer may give you some kind of you can talk with the developer. If your client doesn't agree to use the actions class as a kind of tricky thing, you can go and get the help of the developer, and you can ask the developer to give some kind of access, some special access to you for that closed shadow root as part of automation perspective, that hidden some kind of hidden things the developer may give you, and maybe because of that you can get the things done, but otherwise you have to go with the actions class only. Okay, so anyhow, in this practice Selenium Java automation here, I don't have the access for the developers. I cannot talk to the developers, so I'll be using my trick like actions class methods I'll use in order to type my last name and email address into the this shadow DOM, closed type of shadow DOM elements. Okay, for open shadow DOM, we can get the shadow root, and from that open shadow root we can find the elements, and using the CS selector we can find the elements. With only CS selector can locate the shadow DOM elements, and with that locating elements we can perform the operations on the elements. But closed, we cannot do anything. We have to use tricks and tips like actions class and all, get these things done. Okay, so hope guys you got an idea in this particular practice Selenium Java automation here on how to automate the shadow DOM elements, okay, which are part of a closed shadow root or open shadow root. Okay, all the things. And also I have explained the terminology about what is DOM means, why DOM is required for the browsers. Okay, how browsers will convert the HTML into the DOM. Okay, so that JavaScript elements can interact. Okay, JavaScript can interact with these DOM elements. Okay, so before rendering on the web pages and all those stuff. And next thing I covered is like the main DOM will be there, and we have the shadow DOMs also created. What is the use of shadow DOMs? Why developers have to create shadow DOMs for the elements? So element that is connecting to the shadow DOM is called a shadow host, and the root element under which all these shadow DOM elements are there, whether it is closed or open, is called a shadow root. Under the shadow DOM elements will be there. How with the help of shadow host we can get the shadow root in the Selenium automation, and how with the help of the shadow root, if it is closed open type, how we can find the elements in the shadow DOM elements and perform the operations. If it is closed type, how can we use tips and tricks like actions class to get the things done. Okay, all this I have covered in this session. So this is a very useful session for a lot of people, and a lot of people doesn't explain this kind of concept. So take advantage of this. If you don't understand this session, again watch this session again from the beginning to the end, and you'll definitely get the confidence in automating the shadow DOM elements in the going ahead. Okay, So guys, that's all for this session. Hope you like the session. So if you like the session, give us the comments, okay, give us the shares and likes, because it's a very important video, okay, that will help a lot of people during automation, okay. So thank you all. See you in the next practice Selenium Java automation series. Also watch my previous Selenium Java automation series videos. Before this, I automated a lot of things on the Let Code application and also other applications also. So get yourself, get more confidence by practicing this kind of applications and this kind of advanced topics of Selenium. So that's all for this session. See you in the next session of practice Selenium Java automation here series. Till then, see you. Bye bye.